Put down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. Get ready for 60 minutes of wall-to-wall photography, including photo news, tips, and your photography questions in real time with answers from your host, Olympus Visionary Joe Edelman.
That's me. How you doing? As always, it is Wednesday night, and it's time for another live episode of TogChat. Hey, I'm your host, Joe Edelman, and my mission for the next 90 minutes is to help you develop a more solid understanding of the hows and whys behind great photographs. Thank you so much for checking in. I really appreciate it. It's always good to see some of you back here on a Wednesday night. And I say some of you because, hey, you never know what kind of grief you're going to give me, right? I'm kidding, seriously. But hey, listen, gang, before we get started, you know that I am going to ask you for that big favor, right? Let your friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. All you got to do is press that little button where it is, right down there. Okay, hit that little button, share it out. You can share the link, tog.chat/live. I'll put that here in the window for you just in case, and let your friends know. And of course, check in. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're from. I've got John and I've got Ken here from the UK, Jean Edward in the Netherlands, Aaron's here from the UK, Steve out in, where's Steve? Steve's out in, I think, Minnesota with his stepson, Aiden. How are you? Great to meet you. I got Build Signal from Germany, Lynn from New York. I got Canada here. God, it's just awesome. So seriously, thank you. So a couple of things. I got a few little pieces of news for you that I want to share. We'll get that out of the way quickly so that we can get into questions. Of course, I want to update you on my travel schedule for the next couple of weeks because fall is here. Fall is a time where all the big photography events and the photography conventions and trade shows start up. And I'm really hoping that I get to meet a lot of you this fall because I've got a lot of travel on the agenda. But I don't have a lot of questions lined up, right? So start typing. Get stuff in there. Tonight's your night. We got a couple kind of good marketing questions already. We've got a couple good questions about post-production. Hey, seriously, if you're here, hopefully you want to learn something. Hopefully there's something about your photography that you are looking to improve. So type, let me know what you would like me to chat about. So a couple of things. The one thing that I had that I've gotten a bunch of questions about recently, and I realized I kind of just glossed over this when I showed it off the first time. But a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned the new recorder that I've been using for my video work and all of my audio. And it's an Olympus recorder. It's a recorder that I'll be honest with you. Originally, when I first saw it, I thought, yeah, that's not going to do much good for me. It's the LSP4 Olympus recorder. In fact, I will share the link here. And the reason why I'm talking about it, guys, this is not a commercial. Olympus is not paying me for this. Yes, I'm one of their brand ambassadors. But I have sincerely had a few people reach out asking about this because it's on sale right now. So I've got something special for those of you that asked. Not only is it on sale, but I'm going to sweeten that pot. But let me tell you about it. So what I love about this, what I had been using, and it's about to go up for sale on eBay. So if you need one, pay attention. I'll let you know when I share the link through my social media. I had been using the Zoom, the H4n. This has been a standby and old faithful for many YouTubers and video production crews for years. There is a newer model, but I know a lot of people just never upgraded to the newer model. They really like this. And you can see it fits in your hand. It's decent size. It's got two XLR jacks on the back. It's got the built-in mics, which nobody ever really uses the built-in mics. And it's pretty simple to use, especially for a guy like me who's definitely not a sound master, like in any way, shape, or form, right? So along comes this, little LSP4, which, by the way, sells for normally $179. So right now until the end of August, so you've got like, 2-3 days, it's on sale for $10 off at $169. But wait, but look at this. So just to give you an idea of size here, let me stick it on the side here. That's how big this thing is. Like, amazing, right? Now, pros and cons, always, right? The big thing is most of the features that are in this Zoom H4n, while they're great, I've never used them. I would never have a use for them. So it's a piece of gear that, while it did a wonderful job for me, had a ton more features than I needed. The LSP4 strips things down a little bit more. makes it much easier, much simpler. And here are the bonuses. So number one, it has memory built into it. So I can, when I'm record, so I can record right into the unit onto its hard drive. And then when I'm done, I can slide out the USB connector and I can go ahead and I can connect it right into my computer here. We'll get it to focus right there. There it is, okay? So that's built in. I can put a separate micro SD card in here. I can connect an external microphone just like I used to do. Doesn't have XLR jacks, but if you want to use an XLR jack, you can get a short converter cable like you see here. That's, whoops, let's go that way. So, you know, it's got the XLR female and then it's got the mini plug, goes right in. It's also got a headphone jack, all that kind of stuff. So again, not a piece of gear that I thought I would actually migrate to, but Olympus gave me one to try out, fell in love with it, makes my life so much easier. Even if I don't want to work wireless, I can plug my lavalier, like you know what I'm wearing now, I can plug that directly into this and just stick this in my pocket while I'm recording. So I don't even have to go with the whole you know, wireless setups, okay? So what I wanted to share with you, for those of you that asked, I promised I would talk about it tonight, right? So hopefully you're here. Olympus has been kind enough to give me a coupon code. So right now until August, well, the end of the month, whatever it is, 30th, 31st, I should know, I don't know. But till the end of August, you'll be able to use this coupon code on top of the sale, all right? So it's normally $179. It is on sale right now. Here, I'll switch to their webpage. It's on sale right now for $169, and with the coupon code Joe Edelman 10. So hang on one here, LSP4 coupon code. You can get, whoops, and I just typed that improperly, guys. So delete that message. Hang on, let me take that out. Otherwise, you're going to get all messed up here. Let me do it one more time. Okay, LSP4, there we go. Coupon code is Joe Edelman 10. See, typing, talking, not my thing to do them both at the same time. So anyway, there it is. You can use that code. You get another $10 off. That code's good until the end of the month. So again, for those of you that have asked me about, you know, what is this crazy little recorder I'm using? Is it any good? Does it work? I love it. I've been getting great sound from it. I do not miss my Zoom at all. And like I said, my Zoom is about to go up on eBay because I have no use for it. So that's that piece. Next piece coming up, while I'm on the browser screen here, let's switch over. Remember, next weekend, so not this weekend coming, which is Labor Day weekend, but next weekend, I'm going to be out in Berkeley, California on Saturday and Sunday. So that's Saturday the 7th, Sunday the 8th. All day Saturday, I'm doing a fashion and beauty portraiture event where I'll be doing a demo in the morning, 10:30 in the morning till I think about noon. And then starting from 1 to 5, it's an experiential where the attendees are going to actually get to shoot the fashion portraits and beauty shots that I do, using the models that we have there, using makeup artists, all of it, all the props, everything, okay? And then on Sunday morning at 8:30 a.m., why do people keep scheduling me for 8:30 a.m. events, right? 8:30 a.m. until 10 a.m., I'm going to be leading a natural light photo walk in downtown Berkeley. So for those of you that are in the Bay Area, California, so that's, you know, like Oakland, if you're in San Francisco, if you're in Berkeley, even, you know, San Jose is not that far away. I hope to meet you guys next week. And then the following week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's the 13th, 14th, and 15th, I will be in Cleveland, Ohio for the Pixel Connections Pixel Photo Fest. Don't miss this event. If there is any way that you can get to Cleveland in 2 weeks, do not miss this event. It is a 3-day and technically a 4-day because there's a pre-event Thursday night. So, hey, gotta have some partying, right? Okay, so there's a pre-event Thursday night. You got $169 for the 3-day all access pass. 169 bucks. How many 3-day photography events with 16 speakers are you going to get to attend for $169, gang? Think about that. There's this really crazy guy named Joe Edelman who is the keynote speaker, kicking it off again at 8:30 a.m. in the morning on Friday the 13th. There's a combination, right? I'm going to do a keynote at 8:30 a.m. on Friday the 13th. Go figure. But hey, look, Scott Robert Lim, Sony ambassador, amazing portrait wedding photographer, Lindsay Adler, Canon Explorer of Light, Meg Lokes, Miguel Giles, also a Sony artisan, Griffin Hammond, who I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is a Panasonic luminary, Marcy Reese, Zachary Allen, Kara Mercer, whose work I just adore, Brian Manier, Matt Hernandez, Logan Deddy, Jim Kopnick, Bobby Froman, Sarah Byrne, and Sam Young. Plus lots of models, lots of cool stuff. Don't miss it. You definitely want to be there, okay? All right, and by the way, make sure you check out this page. I'll give you the link. It's joeedelman.com/edu for all of my upcoming speaking events. There are events posted on there all the way out through August of 2020, okay? So, and by the way, you know, it's not like I can travel across the country for camera clubs and that kind of stuff, but especially if you're in the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic portion of the US, if you're a camera club member, make sure that you are talking to the organizers of your camera club. A policy that I maintain for camera clubs that are usually within up to a 2 to 3 hour drive of me, I will do presentations at camera club meetings for their normal stipend, which is like a fraction of what my normal rate is. I've done that from the beginning of this educational adventure, and will continue to do it as long as I am able. So I know I hear from time to time a lot of camera clubs think, well, you know, there's no way we could afford it. We're not even going to ask. If you're a camera club and you are within drivable distance of me, you can probably afford me because that's a policy that I maintain. Obviously, other events than that do cost a little bit more money and expenses have to be covered, etc. You know, guy's got to pay his bills, right? So let's dig into the important stuff now. I'm going to switch my screen back here. And I saw a couple good questions go by. Keep them coming, gang. Like, I'm not kidding. I don't have any questions in the can today. My social media posting thing for TogChat did not work properly today for some reason. So the post didn't go live in my Facebook group and they didn't go live on my personal Facebook page. So nobody was sharing questions on Facebook today. So it's all you guys. Like, I'm all yours. Let's talk. So first one came in pretty early. This was from Ken Vincent. And he had a question here. Describe a good method for adding a golden glow to darker skinned people using Photoshop. He's thinking kind of like a sports or an athlete portrait, but he wants kind of a warm look. So, and then he goes on to add here in a second piece, I want a cool look to the environment, but a warm glow on the person's skin. So that adds one extra step, Ken. And let me be clear, by the way, there are a couple different ways that you can go about doing this. So I personally don't do a lot of the golden glow stuff, right? Like, obviously I don't live in Florida, so I don't do a lot of, you know, bikini shots and beach things and that kind of stuff. So I'm not trying to say it's bad or you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying I don't do a lot. If I had a shot where I needed to or wanted to just give a little bit of a golden glow boost, what I would do in post is I would go ahead and use the photo filter setting in Photoshop as an adjustment layer. So I would, you know, do all my prep work in my basic developing in Camera Raw. I would open my file into Photoshop, do my skin retouching, and if I'm doing compositing or any of that kind of stuff, I would take care of that. And then one of my final steps would be to use a photo filter and essentially use an amber filter, which they're adjustable. There's several different versions. You can use a CTO type filter that they have, you know, essentially already dialed in, or you can use just an orange filter and play with the opacity. But here's the trick. So two things based on your question, Ken. One, I will add that filter, and then I'm going to experiment with two adjustments to get just the right amount of that warm color. Adjustment option number one is simply the opacity of that filter. I'm going to try adjusting the opacity up and down, depending on how dark the person's skin is, depending on how close you are in the shot, depending on your lighting, depending on so many different things. Opacity may or may not give you what you're looking for, but it's the quickest and fastest of the adjustments to sample to see what the result will be. My second line of attack, if I'm not finding what I want from that, is I would leave that adjustment layer at 100%, and then I would try sampling the various blending modes, going from, you know, the standard to hard light to soft light, to multiply, to darken, etc. Even possibly playing with the hues and luminosities, just to experiment to see where it's going to get me. Now, understand, and this gets to the last piece of your question, understand that when I use that blend mode, of course, this filter that I've put on, this filter layer, is going to impact the entire image. And especially if I'm playing in blend modes, it's probably not going to do something that is ideal or flattering to the background, right? To the ambience of the scene. All I need to do then is create a mask, a simple layer mask, and I'm just going to brush out the background. So you mentioned, Ken, in your follow-up question that you want the environment to be kind of cool in color tones, but you want the person to be warm glowed. Same thing. You're basically going to put that adjustment layer on, you're going to mask it, and then you're just going to brush back in the environment around the person. It's really easy to do, very quick to do, okay? That would be my approach. There may be more elegant and more simple / efficient techniques. I would encourage you to check out Pix Imperfect, and I'll type the name here. I have had this young man on here on TogChat before. Type that name into the search bar in YouTube. Look up Pix Imperfect. His name is Unmesh Vinda. He is amazing. I mean, obviously, you've got Mr. Scott Kelby, who is the master of all things Photoshop. You've got guys like Aaron Nace and Phlearn. That's Phlearn. I'll type that in too. Who also does amazing stuff. Kelby and Aaron Nace at Phlearn, you get a lot of free stuff, but you have to pay for the good stuff, right? With Unmesh and Pix Imperfect, it's all free, and it's all amazing. His teaching style is very thorough, very deliberate, very easy to follow, okay? All right, so I hope that helps. Next question here from Gord. So we're still sticking in the Photoshop theme here for a minute. What are your thoughts on doing a shoot with models and then doing a composite of the background? Gord, I do that all the time. If I bring my website up here and let me go to the gallery stuff, we'll switch screens. I'm going to take your picture off here for a second. So, whoops, and okay, so I'm on an Opera browser here right now is what you're looking at, and this plugin does not play well with it. But the shot that you're seeing here of the model, the floating balls, the balls are composited. The bokeh that you're seeing in the background of this red shot here, composited. The texture that you're seeing in the background of this shot right here with my mouse, composited. The circus stripes that you see in the background behind the clown here, composited. The bokeh that you're seeing behind this model with the purple, composited. So, I am not beyond doing composites at all. I don't know if I have any other, no, I don't have any other composites in there. So the challenge with doing composites, Gord, and when I say challenge, I'm not by any means trying to talk you out of it, but I'm kind of giving you that warning of pay attention, right? The way that I like to describe the learning curve that so many people go through with Photoshop and things like compositing, which involves Photoshop. And there's probably a more elegant way to describe this, but the way I describe it is we all kind of ride this roller coaster as we advance our retouching and our post-processing skills. We start out, we all kind of sucked, right? We're down at the beginning of the ride, but we climb the hill, we get better, and we get better, and we get better, and we improve our skills. And then we get to a point where we're actually feeling like we've accomplished something. In other words, we're creating some consistency with our work and the way that our work appears. But in reality, what's happening is we've crested that top hill, and we're actually on our way back down to doing bad work again, because inevitably what we do is we take this new skill set and we abuse it. We kind of overuse it. We don't notice it right away. People looking at our images, yeah, they notice it. Until we get back down to the bottom of that hill and we start to notice like, yeah, you know what? We need to back off on that a little bit. And when we back off a little bit, we still use the technique that we learned, but when we back off a little bit, things start to look really good and the quality of our work starts to go up. And on the way up, we learn some more techniques. Maybe we learn frequency separation. That's a favorite of mine, where people start learning frequency separation, and right when they get to the point where they can go through all the steps, they crest the hill. And as they get over the top of the hill, their work starts getting worse and worse and worse, because instead of doing good frequency separation, basically they're making all of their faces look like close-ups of plastic Barbie dolls, right? And it just doesn't work. And they wind up down in the valley again, where they've really ruined their images that they're working on, because they're just simply overdoing the frequency separation. And ironically, in most cases, for beginners, they're not using the most valuable feature of frequency separation, and that is the tone blending aspect, to get the skin tones blended together. And so they have to work back up the hill, right? So I said it that way, Gord, just so that you're realizing that once you start to do composites, you're bringing in a lot of elements that all have to come from your imagination. One of the lessons that I learned very quickly when I first started playing with composites: don't take a picture and say to yourself after the fact, yeah, it's kind of boring. Maybe I should add a different background. And then go out searching the internet or searching your files to find a different background and then putting it in, because what happens is every now and then you'll get lucky. It will work and you will truly improve your image. Most of the time, it doesn't work well. There's something that's off, there's something that doesn't match, and indeed the image winds up having an uncomfortableness to it, meaning when somebody looks at it, there's just something, and they can't necessarily point it out, but there's just something that's off. It might be that the lighting doesn't match, the lighting on the background and the lighting on the subject. So there's just something that's odd about the scene. There's so many different things that can go wrong. Not to mention the actual technique of masking out your subject and really blending the foreground and background together. So I will tell you that when I do composites, I have the idea to do the composite before I press the shutter, and easily 85 to 90% of the time, I have the image that will be composited with my model sitting on a computer screen in the studio, so that I can make sure that I'm piecing things together and make sure that everything is going to kind of gel together as a finished shot. For that 10 to 15% of the time that I don't, I still know, one, I'm going to composite this image. Two, I know that every lighting choice I make while I'm shooting that model is going to impact what I can composite in the background. So I know that I've got to be making wise choices, and I also know that, okay, so I really want to get some blue, let's say I want to do some blue rim lighting on the edge of the model, which means it would be great if I had an image for the background that had kind of a blue tone to it. So I know as I put that blue rim lighting on that I have now forced my hand, and whatever background I do wind up using, and this is obviously, you can see now hopefully why I don't like to do it this way, but every now and then it's a last minute idea. But now I know that I forced my hand, I've got to come up with a background image that is going to work well for blue. And that, it might be a texture, it could be any number of things, but it's got to fit with that blue motif because it's going to blend better and it's going to blend easier, right? So yes, practice is key, but definitely planning. Planning. Cannot stress the planning. Folks, if you want to get to the point where you are creating work that is technically sound and really, really solid on the details, because believe me, if you're going to be successful with this stuff, it's all about the details. Don't let anybody tell you it's about anything else. It's not even about creativity. It's about the details. If you're going to be successful, you've got to nail the details, no matter what you do. So the best way to nail the details, plan ahead. Be organized, know your path before you press the shutter button. That's always going to be the best way to make that happen, okay? All right, next up here, let's see, scrolling on down. Steve Wilking, what are your thoughts on staging a paid gig for my stepson to keep his interest in photography? Of course, he wouldn't know I staged the gig with payment. He has some skills, bad or good. To be honest with you, Steve, so you're asking me a tough question because I'm a big believer in not telling anybody how to be a parent, right? Let's face it, it's kind of one of those topics, you just don't step on somebody else's toes, right? But you're asking. So that being said, being a parent myself, having raised a son, I wouldn't mislead him or lie to him in that sense. I would be more inclined to, in my case, share my path and my timing on things, which, obviously maybe that applies a little bit more for me because I started right about the age of your stepson. You said your stepson's 12. I got my first camera when I was 11. But no, I think I would be honest. Staging a gig and not telling him, I don't know. That just seems like, number one, you're running a great risk that he's going to find out and he's going to feel let down. Because at the end of the day, you're discussing lying to him. I mean, I'm sorry for making it sound worse than what your intent is. I understand your intent, but no, I just think that, it sounds like you are definitely being a great stepdad. It sounds like you are definitely, making an investment in this young man. Most kids at 12 years old, they're in that's that tween age, right? He's about to hit 13, all hell breaks loose. You know how that goes. I think the most valuable thing that you can give him, and it sounds like you're already doing that, is give him your time, give him your honesty, and make sure that he knows that you are there, as a failsafe, as a backup when he needs it. Because we all know, I mean, he's about to become 13 years old. He's going to make some mistakes, right? Every kid does. It's part of the learning curve. So, no, I think that you could stage opportunities. And when I say stage, I don't mean fake them. I mean create opportunities where he would have an opportunity to, shoot things that matter, okay? Possibly, if you're doing something for someone, maybe he's your second shooter, maybe he's your backup, those types of things. I think there's a lot of ways that you can go, kind of go about it, but I don't know that I would completely mislead him. That just seems like a lot of work with a high risk return. So, okay. All right, next up here, scrolling down. I saw some more good stuff come in, guys. Let's see here. Madison County Sound Labs. That particular Olympus audio recorder works extremely well for EVP work. Spirit Voice. Yeah, Madison County Sound Labs. It's actually great to hear somebody else who apparently, since you were Sound Labs, really knows their stuff. Like I said before, I am not a sound guy. Like, sound is my Achilles heel when it comes to video. And so, because of that, I had kind of written this off when I first learned about it. There's no way. And I'm sure that at the end of the day, there are aspects to it that are no different than the difference between a big sensor, full frame, or an APS-C and a Micro Four Thirds. There are certainly benefits to having the bigger units with more features. But for my needs and from at least my perceived quality difference, this has been amazing, like absolutely amazing. It's been a game changer for me, just in the sense of faster, quicker, less stuff to deal with, less weight to carry if I'm working on location. So I've been really, really thrilled with it. So thank you for that feedback. So Ajax, I like your latest post using the mag bounce. May I ask what your thought process was for using it other than just to demonstrate it? Did it give a certain look that you were going for? So here, let me bring this up in case you guys have no idea what he's talking about here. I made a post on Instagram today. And, it goes without saying, gang, if you are not following me on Instagram, why the hell not? What's it going to take? Like, come on. But seriously, I know, a lot of you would prefer that I would get back to doing the tutorials much faster than I have. I just put my Instagram link in the chat window there. It's also in the description below the TogChat video here. I haven't stopped teaching you, and I'm not just teaching you on Wednesdays, okay? Like I said, tutorials are coming back. They're not going away. But If you follow me on Instagram, what you will see is that, hey Jackson, I'm just gonna take your comment off here. Each of my posts is a little tutorial. So for instance, like this one with the clown, you know, as you do the swipe right, okay? In this particular case, I talk about how I solved the problem with this costume piece that the model had brought, and I loved, but it was dirty and it was smudged. And when I shot it, I decided to use the collar because I thought, you know what, I just really love the feel, the vibe of this collar. And as much as I tried working on it in Photoshop, I started to realize this is gonna take me 3 or 4 hours to actually get rid of it, and it's probably not gonna look that good. So in the end, what I wound up doing was I added a texture over the entire image. So there's a lighting setup. It's a one light setup, and there's all the camera settings. So just to show you the amount of detail that I put into these, plus the description gives you the full breakdown. But going back to the full shot, you can see how I added the texture. It gave me some texture in the background. This is the exact same technique that I was talking about earlier for Gord when we were talking about composites, where it's just a texture background that I overlaid, whoops, sorry, and then masked out my subject. So the post that Ajax is talking about, this went up today. So, and by the way, let me give you guys an Instagram lesson. I'll go ahead and own this, right? It's really extremely irritating. In fact, bear with me 1 second. I'm gonna pull up a photograph here for you guys to see. So this is what the picture is supposed to look like. This is a true story, guys. Like, so you can all have a laugh at me, right? But just so you know, this is what the shot was supposed to look like. Pure black and white. There's no blue tint to it, right? So while I was making my post on Instagram, I have these behind the scenes shots, right? And I have the little behind the scenes, there's another behind the scenes shot, and I had the little behind the scenes video that shows you the lighting diagram. Well, in my infinite wisdom, or should I say infinite stupidity, I decided I wanted to add a filter to this image because it was a little bit warm. So I thought if I add a blue tint to it, it's going to blend in better, especially the black and white, with the other images. What I didn't realize is that when I did that, I apparently added the same filter to all of the images in this post. And it wasn't until I had answered about 15 comments and had like 200 likes that I realized, oh my God, all the images are blue. So this is what it's supposed to look like. So Ajax, to get back to your question, and let me find your question again here, Ajax, and I'll stick it back up on the screen. So I used a mag bounce for this shot, guys, to make this work. And again, if you don't know what that is, here, where did I put it? Where did I put it? There it is. Let me grab one. So the mag bounce is by MagMod. It is this gadget right here, okay? Let me go ahead and grab an 8200 here so that I can show you guys how I did this. Bear with me, I'm grabbing a strobe. Okay, so basically what makes this shot work is the backlighting, not this main light, but basically what I did is, if the subject's here, I mounted the light up above her like so, and instead of putting it on this way, which would normally be what people do, they bounce, okay? I flipped it upside down this way so that the light is coming through it. When the light hits this round surface, it's throwing the light out in a very broad, wide path is what it's doing, okay? But the magic behind this lighting setup is the light that's coming from behind her. So if I go back to Instagram and we go ahead, so here you can see the 8200 that I just had in my hand with the mag bounce upside down. It is sitting just above these two V-flats, and behind each one of the V-flats is another strobe. So I'll let this play out and you'll be able to see them there. So I've got strobes, they're lighting the background. The majority of the light is coming from behind and it's bouncing around in here. I have this top strobe with the 8200 dialed way down in power just so that it's giving me just a little bit of extra fill getting some light into the eyes, and making sure that I don't have too much shadow to deal with. If I would have had nothing in front of her and used just the light behind her, which I could have done, that would work. The challenge I have there is the glow that you see coming over her shoulders, the glow that you see coming around her hair, it would have been much, much more intense, and it actually would have reduced the volume. Like all of this hair that you're seeing on the edges would have been gone. Her shoulders would have looked a little bit more alien-like because there would have been that much more light that would have been bleeding in over the top. So the light with the mag mod, or the mag bounce, it's essentially just a cheat. If you go back, there's a video on my YouTube channel, gang, and I'll bring it up here. Let me just see here. I'm going to do a quick search to see if I can find this video. I can. So there. If you go to my YouTube channel, and on the, not on the search bar up top, that's all of YouTube. On the little magnifying glass, you type in mag mod, you will find this video right here, which is your best shot is a mistake. And it talks about a cool mag mod hack. In that video, I actually show this hack. And in that video, I actually describe how I use it to give me the same kind of light that I could get from a beauty dish. Right? So again, Ajax, it's all about understanding that inverse square law. But really what it was just, you know, trying to give just a tiny little bit of fill so that I wasn't just completely overpowering everything with the background light. But at the same time, I didn't want the image to look like it was front lit in that regard. So that was kind of the point behind it. All right. So let's see here. Scrolling down some more. Where are we at? Alp Kamiz, you asked me a question on one of your videos. I mentioned you on Twitter, but I think you've been too busy. Yeah, Alp, neither of those are the best way to get me to answer a question. So you're here, and I'm answering questions. What's the question, man? Right? Instead of giving me a hard time about it, tell me what your question is. I'll try and answer it, okay? So, all right, Tommy. Last week I asked a question. You mentioned that you were using 16 by 48 softboxes with grids. The grids got a reaction. I'm using the grids to prevent spill. Am I wasting my time with the grids? Well, so Tommy, the problem that I have, you're right, they did get a reaction. And thank you for calling me out on it, honestly. Doing what I do, this is not an excuse, just being honest. Doing what I do, I frequently, number one, answer similar questions over and over and over again, right? Not your problem, my problem. Number two, there are certain techniques that are promoted by people on YouTube, not me, that while they are great techniques, the way they are being taught to a new generation of photographers, they're being taught for all the wrong reasons. So I'll give you my list. The need to use high-speed sync, the need to overpower the sun, focus and recompose, grids, need for beauty dishes, the need for 600 watt-second flashes, and my list could go on. The overwhelming majority of photographers that I meet when I go out to do my presentations, or that I do consultations with, or that I talk to here on TogChat, the only reason that they understand they're using those techniques is so that they can replicate something that they see some guy on YouTube doing. Worst reason ever. All of these techniques have a place. All of these techniques are indeed a tool in a photographer's toolkit, but it's no different than picking up a hammer and using a hammer, right? If you don't hold the hammer properly and you don't swing it properly, you're not able to actually use the hammer properly. Your swing becomes very erratic. You're not getting as much impact on the nail when you swing it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's no different with these techniques. So, Tommy, my response, which was kind of unfair because I don't know all of your situation, so I'm glad you called me out on it. It was based on the fact that one of the questions I routinely get is, you know, people are having lighting issues, and one of the things that winds up in their list of gear being used while they are having that lighting issue is a grid. And even the idea of using grids to prevent spill, Most of the time when I hear photographers say that, again, they're repeating something that they learned on YouTube, but yet they're using the softbox in such a way that if they understood the inverse square law, like actually understood it, they would realize that the spill that they are trying to contain is having zero impact on the outcome of their image. It's just a fact, right? So, yeah, grids are great. I got a grid hanging back up there. I don't think it's I don't know if you can actually see in the shot, but it's hanging back there that goes on that little beauty dish right there, right? So I've been in this studio since what, beginning of June. I've yet to use it in here. Probably won't use it in a very long time. Hardly ever use them. So do I own them? Yes, they are a tool. Every now and then there is a time where it is appropriate. But you also have to understand that the minute you put a grid on any light source, by restricting the spread of the light, and that grid is also reducing the surface of that light in terms of light coming from it, you are also reducing the softness of the modifier that you have chosen to use in the first place. So, there's always cause and effect, right? So, to go to your question tonight, Tommy, are you wasting your time? The question of are you wasting that time is, so I'm going to give you two questions and answer these two, and I can probably give you a decent answer because obviously without actually seeing your setup or seeing a diagram of your setup, which, by the way, if you join my Facebook group, you would be able to share that information. So I will put a link to my Facebook group here so that you have it. If you haven't joined already, you should. But my two questions for you to answer tonight while we're here live, Tommy, are number one, how close were those strip boxes to your subject in feet? Approximately. I don't need to know exactly. And secondly, how close were those strip boxes to the background? So if you can give me those two numbers, I can give you a pretty good sense of whether or not you were wasting your time with the grids. So again, I want to be clear, gang. It's not bad to own grids. It's not bad to use grids if you really need them. Otherwise, they're actually just making your life harder. They really are, okay? So we'll move on. I'll look for Tommy's answer, and we'll come back to his question there, okay? All right. Let's see. Alp, I was being dramatic because I like you a lot. Jokes aside, remember me. I'm from Slovakia. It's midnight here, and I barely have a chance to catch you live. So the question was this. Oh, wait. So do I have it? Yeah, here it is. Okay, here's the question. Good. So from Alp, I've bought a 30-meter square space, and I'll be moving soon. So I'll be using your golden tips. One question I struggle with is the ceiling, since it is a typical flat ceiling like I have in the video. And by the way, he's referring to the video about my home studio, not the new one, because I've got nice, really tall ceilings here. He cannot fit his softbox up high enough on top of the model to get a soft light. So what do I recommend to fix this problem? How can I get a spread of light above if the ceiling is not as high as the hangar type of massive studios? He tried to shorten his question due to restricted typing in chat. No, that's okay. So actually, it's easy, Alp. It's called bounce flash. I used to do it all the time in my home studio. Just simply take a strobe, aim it straight up at the ceiling. Put it right next to your subject. So if your subject's right here, put it right here out of frame, go straight up. And if you need it to be a little bit in front of them, put it a little bit in front of them. Go straight up. Use the room. And I do mention this, Alp, in that video, in the home studio video, that I use the room as a modifier. So obviously I knew putting that studio together that there would be certain limitations for certain kinds of lighting, certain kinds of shots, and certain kind of lighting arrangements, right? So frequently I would just do bounce flash, but not the kind of bounce flash where you've got the flash 15 feet away and it's angled. I'm talking bounce flash straight up so that I'm getting that top-down lighting. Takes a little bit of experimenting, but it works great. I've done it many, many times. I've got a lot of shots where I've done it, and it's very effective. And just like anything else, no different than when I came here into this studio. Sure, I understand, lighting and what I'm doing, but still, I did a lot of practicing in that. So Alp said here, I don't want to light them behind. You don't have to light them from behind. So if this is the subject, I said put it here. I don't know how, you said initially, Alp, and I realize we have language differences, so let's work with this. But you said initially you want to light them from the top down. So that means here, right? So if you want the light still in front of them, but you want it high, really high, still you bounce the light out in front. It could be 3 feet in front, 5 feet in front, 10 feet in front. And you allow the light to spread accordingly. And it's going to be just like having a big softbox up there. Again, Alp, 2 things. You want me to give you a specific answer that says use this modifier, boom, and you're fixed? No, I can't, man. It depends on what you want the light to look like. You need to learn how the inverse square law works. I say it all the time. I teach it all the time. I talk about it all the time, and I've made videos about it. In fact, since it's coming up so much tonight, I'll share the link again, okay? Can't stress it enough, gang. If you do not learn how the inverse square law works, if you do not take the time to understand the inverse square law and master it, you will never, never, capital letters, be able to produce consistently great lighting. You just won't. Because essentially, every time you set your lights up, you're pissing in the wind, hoping that something works. And that is not the way to be a consistently good photographer. It's just not, right? So, but I promise you, Al, based on what you're describing, since your studio is approximately the same space as what I was working with a similar ceiling, bounce flash is the key, right? Bounce flash gets a bad name, gang. You know, there's 2 kinds of flash lighting that we are all taught pretty early on in our lighting education. And even back in the 70s when I was learning lighting, it was the same way, right? We were taught that, you know, bounce flash, not good because you get the heavy shadows under the eyes. And then we were taught direct flash, oh my God, horrible, right? Because it's harsh and it creates shadows. Well, you know what? We can go and do a little exploring and find some amazing iconic images shot with bounce flash, shot with direct flash. Not to mention, since most of you here are guys, go look at Maxim Magazine. Maxim Magazine averages 10 out of every 12 covers every year, shot on a white background with 1 direct flash. They sell a lot of magazines. Just saying, right? So, you know, again, it's all about creating a problem, solving the problem. But you definitely don't have to put the light behind them out, but you can move it out front. And the closer you put it to them, so the more dramatic it's going to be. The further away you make it, the softer it's going to be. So I'll tell you that much. But, you know, my advice would be, if you've put all this money into setting up this home studio, so in American dollars, $60, right? But get yourself a mannequin. In American dollars, for $60, you can get a full-fledged mannequin, just like my Lola that I have. All right. And for some of you that are new, if you've never met her before, okay, here, there's Lola, okay? So she's great because I'm going to tell her, hold that pose. She will hold that pose. She's not going to move for the rest of the night. It's awesome, right? So if you need to experiment, you need to practice. I mean, I start going on the road next weekend, right? I'm going to be out in California, then I'm doing Cleveland. I'll be in here the end of this week, beginning of next week, running some practice runs on some new shots that I want to do for some new talks that I'm doing, things like that. I'm going to practice and make sure. Eric, thank you so much, man. I really, really appreciate the super chat. Sincerely, thank you. So yeah, but I promise you, the bounce flash thing out, with a little bit of practice, it'll work and you can do amazing stuff with it. You really can, okay? Look, she's still holding the pose, like perfect, okay? All right, next one here, back from Tommy. So Tommy was the one who called me out for kind of raising an eyebrow about the grids, right? I was talking about grids a minute ago. So they were on each side of the subject about 4 feet from the subject, and the one on the right was about 2 feet from the background. The one on the left was about 3 feet from the background. So, oh, wait a minute. And then he's telling me one key light right of center, about 8 feet from the subject, raised above, and yes, pointed down. Now you're taking time. Okay, so follow along, guys, because you've got to use some spatial skills here, right? Like, you got to be able to kind of imagine some spatial skills. So when I read the first part of your response, Tommy, that said 4 feet from the subject, 3 feet from the subject, my first thought was, that's pretty close. You shouldn't need, normally, to worry about spilling on the background, except for the fact that you've got them 2 feet from the background. That's a problem. So the easy solution is, which you may not be able to do. So I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to try and do both sides of the conversation, right? The easy solution is get your subject more than 2 feet from the background. If you're not able to do that, then you need the grids. But there's another piece of this that's making it more challenging, and that is the fact that your key light is 8 feet away. Now, normally there wouldn't be anything wrong with setting your key light 8 feet away, but then having your rims at like 4 feet and 3 feet, like that's pretty doggone close, okay? So if at all possible, start to move that stuff away from the background, and then you solve your spill problem even without the grids. But yeah, Tommy, it's one of those things, the next setup that you do. So one, join my Facebook group. Two, the next setup that you do that's kind of similar to this, make sure you post the image, one image, finished, retouched with all the information that's required. But as soon as your post is approved, go into the comments section and post me a behind the scenes, like a wide angle shot of your setup so that I can see where all the lights are in one shot. And then at that point, I promise I can help you really troubleshoot this a lot better because there's still a lot of variables that I don't know. But it sounds to me, if you've got everything that close to the background, it sounds like you're working in a really tight space. And indeed, that's going to require probably having to use some flags. But you're not helping yourself by having those rims that close and then having your key light 8 feet away. So unless your key light's massive, you can afford to bring it quite a bit closer, right? But that's just a huge ratio difference that there's generally not going to be a big benefit to, okay? James Wong, do you have a favorite lens and why? Well, depends on what I'm shooting, right? I mean, if we're talking, you know, my primary work, the portrait work, the fashion portraits, that type of thing, hands down, my go-to lens is the 45mm f1.2 Pro. So for those of you that are not Micro Four Thirds users, that's a 90mm full frame equivalent. Incredibly sharp at f1.2. It has amazing bokeh for those rare times that I worry about the bokeh, but it does. It's also waterproof, all that great stuff. If I'm looking for a carry-around lens, you know, just so on my backpack, here, I'll show you guys. Let me zip it up. When I'm out and about walking around, I always have a camera hanging on the outside. Whoops, and I'm also pulling my microphone out. There we go. I always have a camera hanging on the strap of my backpack with a Peak Design grip. So the camera that's always like available and ready to take a picture at a moment's notice, it's an EM1 Mark II, no grip on it, just the EM1 Mark II. It's got the Peak Design mount to fit into the grip and the 12-100 f4, right? So again, for you full frame folk, this is a lens that you can see. It's like smaller than my hand, lengthwise, right? It's a 24-200mm equivalent in one lens. It's a pro lens, so it's got the weatherproofing, super sharp, super easy to use. Love it. I mean, this whole piece right here is just ridiculously light and easy. If I were doing an event, which I don't do a lot of those, or if I'm shooting my grandkids, perfect example, my favorite is the 7-14 wide angle zoom. So that's like a 14-28, you know, full frame equivalent. So it would be kind of, you know, in that range. So, all right. Eric, should the DX option on an FX give the same result as a regular DX? Eric, that would be way too simple. And you'll have to check with Mr. Northrup to get all of the weird science behind that. But he goes on to say, he has a D500 and D850, and the D850 DX option gives a larger image than the 500. Heard they should be identical, but they aren't. Curious as to why. I'm not going to lie with you, Eric. I have no freaking idea. So for those of you that don't understand what he's talking about, if you're a full frame user, like a Nikon user, and I believe the Canon cameras do it, and the Sony cameras probably do it too. I don't know. I'm not going to lie. Not a gear guy. Don't care. But from my background with Nikon, the Nikon had a feature where I could go ahead and I could basically, in camera, through software, shoot DX format, which meant that I was basically, if I was working with a 100mm lens, so you guys know that I used to use the Tokina 100mm macro for my portrait work with a Nikon. So switching over to DX basically made it a 150mm crop equivalent, right? So logically, Eric, yes, it should be exactly the same. I am not at all remotely surprised that there is a difference, but that sounds like something to take up with Mr. Northrup or go talk to the Fro, and they'll probably give you some crazy response as to why. I mean, ultimately, I don't know why it matters for you. I have a feeling you're going to tell me, well, because you have one of each camera and you want the D500 because of its speed, capabilities, and because it does give you a little extra reach if you're shooting sports or wildlife. But then when you want to use the two side by side, you want them to be equal. I've never heard of a situation where, oh, Madison Sound Ecamm Labs, you're in Allentown? Awesome, man. That's really cool to know. I'm in Allentown right now. I'm at 4th and Tillman Street. So, yeah, I've never heard of a situation, Eric, where you've actually got two cameras that just really have to be like exact at any given time. But yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you a little bit more, but I really don't know. So Eric's saying here, I was looking at selling the 500, but I don't feel comfortable doing it with the difference. And basically using wildlife photography. So yeah, I mean, if you're a Nikon guy, there's a lot of value, if you're sticking with a Nikon system, right? So let's put it that way. And Eric, I'm just gonna whisper one suggestion, right? Just one, and then I'll finish. But that suggestion, there we go. Right. Micro Four Thirds. Just saying. 300mm is a 600mm full frame, and so on and so on. But if you're going to stick with the Nikon stuff, the D500 is probably going to be much better suited for your sports and wildlife than the D850, unless, of course, you've got 10 or 12 grand to throw away on their super hardcore lenses, which most people don't, right? So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the challenge. But, I will tell you, Eric, seriously, like no baloney, if you're sitting with those two cameras and lenses, the good part is Nikon stuff still holds its resale value pretty well. You could actually trade in and get yourself set up in Micro Four Thirds, like probably almost even up. And then you'd be working with gear that's a third the cost, a third the weight, and a third the size. Just saying. So if you're doing wildlife stuff, those are important features. So, okay. And then obviously, Eric, whatever you do, now that I said all that, let me be really clear. Don't you dare do that because I said so. You need to go out and try the cameras. So if you live in the US, it's super easy. Any of the photo retailers, or you can rent them. Even if you live like in Europe, it's easy enough to get your hands on, with a little bit of effort, to get your hands on a system to try it out. So yeah, never make a system change because of some guy on YouTube. Seriously, okay? Maybe I'll make you curious, but you go out and you try that system. You get it in your hands and you use it. The tactile aspects of a camera, the UX, the ergonomics are not talked about enough. They're just not. It's one of the most important features in a camera. And instead, everybody's worried about how many megapixels and how big is the sensor and all this other BS, which at the end of the day is not going to make a difference in your pictures, gang. It's just not. The stuff that really matters, it's the ergonomics. It's the user interface. It's how you as a human being are going to interact with that gear. That is one of the biggest things, and nobody talks about it. These gear hustlers out there, and you know who they are. I've already mentioned them. All they want to talk about is the numbers and cause anxiety for people and get people stressed out. So anyway. All right. Gord, another statement here. This is why I love you, Joe. Your education is unsurpassed. Aside from the 3 already models that I have, I just picked up another 3 who would love to shoot with me this week, one during this podcast. Well, Gord, that's awesome, man. I'm glad that it's working out. So I'll give you a little tip now. So follow along, or you're going to think that I'm like talking in circles, right? It is good to be busy. It's good to find opportunity. It is good to find a lot of models. And it's really, really good and important to be having fun. However, And there's a guy here, at least I think he's here. Ajax is usually here. Ajax is one of my members at Tog Knowledge. I've been mentoring him for a little bit of a while now, and Ajax will attest to the fact he was a guy. He's like super high energy. He is so passionate about his photography. He's having a ton of fun about it, and he was a guy who kind of ran before he learned to walk, right? So when I hear somebody, it's like, oh yeah, I've got all these shoots lined up and all that, and it's like, okay, you're starting to run. Be careful about the running. When you're still learning, it is important to walk, and that means take the time, put in a lot of effort to plan out a shoot. After you do the shoot, take the time to properly edit the shoot. And to be clear, so we're speaking the same language, editing is the process of saying, I like this one, I don't like that one, I like this one. That is editing, or culling. Developing / retouching is what you do in Photoshop and Lightroom after you've made your selections, right? So let's get the language right. And understand that once you get to that point, you will learn more by studying the images that you don't like, the ones that you're not going to use. Just think about it, gang. We all do it. Every one of you do it. I do it. We go out and we shoot 100 frames, 500 frames, 1,000 frames. We find the 3 that we like. It's like, yes, these are amazing. We process them and we move on. They're on social media. We're on to the next shoot. And the remaining images, they either get deleted or they get filed away. But we never take the time to look at them. So what do we learn? What do we learn in the process? Even me at this point in my career, I have to force myself to do that, because if I don't, I'm not learning. I'm not really evaluating my work. I'm just kind of taking the win and moving on. There's no advancement in that process, right? So being excited, having all that energy, really going for it, my God, don't stop. But pace yourself. Pace yourself so that you're really able to get the value out of the process, because the hard part is the education piece, the real learning from what you're doing. It's not happening right here. Please don't make that mistake. I am not teaching you. I am planting ideas that you then have to go out and teach yourself. You've got to go out and try them. You've got to do this stuff. You've got to set things up. You've got to experiment. You've got to fail, because that's where you're really going to learn, which is why I'm telling you to look at the images that you don't use. Learning takes a lot of effort, gang. It's hard work. It's really hard work. And there's no shortcut. That's the really crappy part about the process. There is no shortcut to learning. A lot of people are convinced. Ajax, I think, was one of these people. When he first met me, they're convinced that YouTube is the shortcut. If I soak in as much knowledge as I possibly can on YouTube, I can shortcut. I can be good to go. And then what you wind up is you wind up with tons and tons and tons of knowledge and no actual ability. No ability to actually really be able to put that knowledge to work, right? That's the challenge. So again, all good things, in balance, right? That's the key, okay? All right, so, and actually Gord came back here, so it's fair that I put this up. I agree 100%, that's what I've been doing. The recent requests are through recommendations and photos of recent shoots, and that's awesome, Gord. That's exactly what you want to happen. So seriously, good for you, okay? Germano here talking about what I was discussing with Eric before. Ergonomics, very important. Sometimes at the end of the day, his camera gear goes from 2K to 5K in his hands, which, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're lugging heavy gear around all day long, by the end of the day, it gets tough. And then, let's face it, the older you get, yeah, it's nice to have that lighter gear. So, so Eric, you're going to be at Pixel Photo Fest? Awesome. All of the camera manufacturers, well, I think all of them. Now that I said that, I better take a step back. I can tell you for a fact, Olympus will be there. So if you want to be able to try out any of the Olympus gear, or for that matter, any other brand, right? If you're looking at other cameras, they'll be there, right? So I know Olympus is going to be there with loaner gear. So they'll actually be cameras that you can check out and use during the event. So if you are Olympus curious, okay, then by all means, make sure you do it. There's no charge to do it. All they do is they take your driver's license, they hold your driver's license while you're playing with the gear, you bring it back, the whole bit. Super, super simple. And yes, if you have any questions about any of it, Eric, while it's there, make sure you come and see me. And by the way, Eric, if you haven't registered for your classes yet at Pixel Photo Fest, they are filling up crazy fast. In fact, I think most of mine are filled up or sold out. So make sure you get registered like right away. So that's not just buying the ticket, but that's actually signing up for the classes. And if you're having trouble getting into any of mine, then please make sure you reach out to me, and I'll see what I can do to make sure that you can get in. But if nothing else, please make sure that you are there for the keynote. You do not want to miss the keynote. It's going to be pretty awesome, I hope. So, all right, let's see here. Mike Radloff, you did your search for a monolight, and it looks like my recommendation, the Flashpoint 320M, is the best deal. Used on stale, still the best. Fan and add-on battery is the deciding factor. So yeah, I mean, the Flashpoint 320 is like stripped down, basic studio stroke, man. I mean, so if that's all you need, they're great. Here's the things that you should know, right? Number one, they are a little big and they're a little heavy. So obviously, if you're going to be going out on location, that's a consideration. For in a studio, inside, no problem. They are AC powered, but you can get a battery attachment for it, so that's not an issue. They do have a fan, so they do make noise. If you are going to shoot video around them, you need to factor that in because the fans do generate noise. And it's loud enough that if I had one sitting like over here, you would hear the fan in my microphone. If, by comparison, remember when I was using like the Interfit Honey Badgers, they also have a fan, but it's like mega quiet. So I could have one sitting here in the shot and you wouldn't be able to hear the fan. So that's a factor. And then one last thing, Mike, the recycle time on them is very good, but for as big a fan as they have, it doesn't cool them down rapidly. So if you're one of those photographers that tends to be like pop, 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 you're going to get really frustrated with the Flashpoint 320M because after about 6 pops, it's going to stop until it cools down, and then you'll be able to use it again. So if you're shooting more the way you should be shooting, click, 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 adjust that, click, tilt your head a little bit, click, that's awesome. Bring your chin forward, click. If you're working with a better flow, they're great, and you can't beat the price, especially like used. If you're going to pick one up on eBay or something, yeah, they're great price. But again, like anything, there are some limitations. So just things to consider, right? All right, where are we at here? Steve Wilking, my channel makes you work harder than ever. You're thankful. Well, I'm glad. Seriously, I am. I mean, that's the idea. So, oh my goodness. So Tenonix. I've been looking at buying some tutorials and lessons of photography. I've been looking at f-stoppers, Clay Cook tutorial, but it's $299. Not sure if it's worth it. It does have a lot included. And then he goes on to basically summarize by saying, is it worth buying tutorial lessons? So full disclosure, first off, number one, I am aware of the existence of that set of tutorials by Clay Cook. I know nothing about them. Full disclosure number two, I do not sell tutorials. Anything that I put online on YouTube is free and will remain free forever. That has been my commitment, okay? So you said here it's $299. So I will tell you that for less than that, you can do one-on-one video consultations with people like myself. For just over double that, so just over double, you could spend a full day in the studio with me, learning one-on-one with me. So no Clay Cook on a computer, but me in person. I'll give you guys all that information. If you go to my website and you click on the Speaking Events tab, there's the one-on-one mentoring, the video consultations also. So here's the personalized workshops. I'll put this in the chat window. And then the one-on-one video consultations. Whoops, let me grab that one. So, I mean, what it really comes down to, Tenonix, is I would expect, because I know f-stoppers, they maintain good standards. I don't always agree with all the things they post on their blogs and that, but they're a great company and they are absolutely, committed to doing good things for the industry. I know that Clay Cook is incredible, right? So I'm confident there's probably great information in there. The real kind of test before you spend $300 is, number one, are you the kind of person who will watch those tutorials more and more, or I should say not more and more, over and over again, and actually take everything in those tutorials, and actually use it. Like, get a mannequin like Lola. Notice she has not moved. That pose, perfect. Are you the kind of person that's going to put in that extra effort? Just watching the tutorial will be an extreme waste of $300. That is not a reflection on clay cook or S-stoppers. Let me be very clear. That is just a reflection on learning, right? It's no different than watching my YouTube videos, gang. You are not going to learn from my YouTube videos unless you go out and put to use what you have just seen me do. Just because you saw it doesn't mean you understand it. And especially when I talk about that inverse square law stuff, believe me, I'm not kidding. I say it in the video. Just because you saw the video, don't think you understand it. Academically, you may understand it, but that's a lot different than actually going out and doing it, okay? So you got to go do it. So that's really where you just got to be honest with yourself, Tenonix. Otherwise, that's $300 is $300, man, right? So that could be another lens even. That could be another strobe. That could be a lot of different things. That could be another learning opportunity. You know, depending on where you're located, you might be able to get a plane ticket and go to Cleveland, Ohio, and go to Pixel Fest and learn firsthand from people that are every bit as good as Clay Cook. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about some of the other really, really amazing speakers that are there. So again, you kind of have to really evaluate what all the options are there with it. But promise me, don't spend that money unless you really are the kind of person that's committed to every single thing you see in that video. You're going to turn around and go and try it yourself. Not just because he tells you to do it. Don't just try the stuff that he says you should try. You're going to try and do everything he does. Otherwise, yes, you're completely wasting your time. I can guarantee you that part, okay? Zvonimir, I remember the words of Joel Meyritz. And if you don't know who Joel Meyritz is, gang, Google the name. It's a photographer who you should know. I know a lot of you like it when I talk about kind of the old master photographers and people you should understand and look at. Here's another name that was just brought up. Joel Meyritz is a photographer whose work you should know. You should appreciate it. You should read his bios. He's a man that I grew up admiring his work and being in awe of. So Zvonimir says, I remember the words of Joel Meyritz, who said once, when he takes photographs, it doesn't mean he understands everything that was within or outside the frame. He allows photos to explain things later. And yes, so I mean, that's kind of more in the visual end. And I completely agree with that, right? Because if I could expand on that, so by no means am I Joel Meyritz, right? But if I could try to give a little bit more in-depth meaning to his statement and to make it a little bit more correct, and by no means do I mean to put words in his mouth, because I would never presume to do that. But if I could add my additional thoughts to his quote, one of the things that you folks have heard me talk about many, many times is that when you give your photograph to the world, that could be posting it on Instagram, posting it on social media, doing whatever. When you show your photograph to the world, you have to be willing to step back and allow them to have their experience with your photograph. Understanding that no other human being will have the exact same experience that you did. Like, it just doesn't work that way, right? And that's okay. So, you know, you basically can't say to people, well, look, this is what I was trying to do, and this is what you're supposed to be looking at, and make sure you see this, and make sure, like, really, how obnoxious would that be, right? When you show off your work, everyone will interpret it the way they interpret it. And that's okay. That's one of the cool things about art, right? About creativity, is, you know, you have the experience of creating it and doing it, and the pleasure drawn from that, but then you have to let other people formulate their own experiences and their own pleasure or displeasure with your creation. And all that is okay. So, all right, let's see here. Amanda added this, which is actually very true. Learning takes place between the comfort zone and the first point of stress. Yeah, I mean, let's face it, and by no means to diminish this, because I completely agree. We could find like 1,000 memes online or fancy quotes that really apply to that. But, you know, it's very true, gang. The keynote that I'm doing at Pixel Fest, which is part of why I'm so excited about it, because when they called me and asked me to come to Pixel Fest and be the keynote, first of all, my first response was like, okay, who's pranking me? Like, are you kidding? Because I already knew some of the names that were presenting at Pixel Fest, and it's like, you want me to be the keynote? So they were very honest. They said, hey, we want you for your energy. People like to listen to you. They respect the way you teach. It's like, cool, I like that. So what do you want me to talk about? And they said, we want you to kick people in the butt. We want you to do your thing. Don't hold back. Let them have it. I was like, really? Like, are you sure? It's like, you want me to show up first, be the first person to speak to these people and potentially, like, you know, push back and push back hard? You're like, yep, go for it. I'm like, okay. So the title of my talk for my keynote is Don't Be Afraid to Suck. Success in photography is key on your willingness to fail. It simply is, right? So Amanda's quote is absolutely perfect, okay? It is not bad to fail. Think about it. In life, right, we all fail. We make many failures. We even make failures when we're warned about the failures. You know, as toddlers, we're told, don't touch the stove, you'll get burned. But we all wind up touching the damn stove. And then we don't touch it again, intentionally, right? So, you know, ultimately, you're never going to be judged on your mistakes. Unless you kill somebody, that's a whole different conversation, right? You're not going to be judged on your mistakes or your failures. You're going to be judged upon how do you manage those? What's the takeaway? What do you do with that experience? That's where the judgment is going to settle in. That's where people are going to decide this is who you are as a person, as a photographer, as a business partner, right? That's the key to that. So, yeah, believe me, I completely agree. Tenonix came back here as a follow-up and said, I would definitely watch and do everything that happens in the tutorial, but I definitely keep thinking on it. And I'll have a look at some other options like one-on-one mentoring. Yeah, and again, Tenonix, I'm not going to give you like a hard sales pitch for coming to me for the mentoring. You might be able to find somebody that's closer to you. It's really just a matter of being very honest with yourself about how you learn best, about what's going to motivate you. Yeah, I mean, I can give you, you know, a list of people. I don't think Ty's here tonight, but a young man named Ty who was out here about a month and a half ago, all the way from Portland, Oregon, came here, spent a day, and you know, really what I wound up, and he was the perfect example. He was like Mr. YouTube, watches all these different YouTubers, had all this knowledge, and like one by one, we went through the day debunking all these things that he learned on YouTube so that he could forget about them and never worry about them again. Like the poor guy, I thought he was going to die when he asked me about feathering softboxes. And I'm like, really? It's like, you want me to show you and talk to you about feathering softboxes? Yeah, like everybody does it and it's so cool. I was like, what's so cool about it? And he starts telling me about how it changes the light. I'm like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, let me show you what feathering does. And better yet, let me explain to you how feathering came about. Feathering came about because photographers were lazy. That's how feathering came about. Does it change the light? Not that much. Not enough to make it worth your while. What it changes is the intensity of the light. But that's not the way all these gurus are teaching on YouTube today. It's ridiculous, right? Again, it's one more tool in a toolkit. You understand how the tool works and you understand how it can benefit you, and then you use it when you need it. But is it something you're doing all the time? Like, it's the right way to set up portrait lighting to feather? Hell no. Why would they make softboxes the way they make them? Why would they design them the way they're designed if the right way was to feather every time? Just saying, right? So, you know, again, that's the thing. You've just got to be honest with yourself about, you know, what you'll do with the information, how you'll follow up. But yeah, learning is good. Learning is always good, okay? Vopper85, I remember you saying something like for every 10 to 15 minutes of YouTube, go use your camera for an hour. Yeah, so it's 2 to 1 is what I asked for. So like tonight, if I make it all the way to 7:30, we will have been here for 90 minutes. I always ask people before you come back next week, make sure you give me 180 minutes with your camera, because if you don't, you're kidding yourself. Like you just are. Now, I know that some of you are, you know, maybe listening to this like a day or two later. I know, like, for instance, a lot of you know Gavin Hoey. I'm really proud to say Gavin listens to TogChat every week on Thursdays while he's doing his editing. That's part of his weekly routine. So if you're able to incorporate it into something else you're doing where, you know, you're still able to be productive in other ways, cool. Then you're off the hook for that 180 minutes, right? But if this is kind of your photography fix for the week, Yeah, no, it's not, right? That means if you're going to spend that 180 minutes, I love you for that. I'm thrilled to have you, but you need to go pick up that camera and you need to take pictures and you need to practice, because this conversation is not making you a better photographer. Hopefully this conversation is giving you some guidance. Hopefully it's helping you academically to solve some problems. Hopefully it's motivating you, but it's not making you a better photographer. Let's be clear about that. So only you can do that. You are the only person in the world that can make you a better photographer. So, okay. All right. Scrolling back here, I think there's still a couple things that I missed. We got another 10 minutes, 9 minutes, guys. So if you got some questions, get them in there. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. If you've got a question and I missed it, by all means, type it in, gang, because I really don't want to miss anybody's thing here. I think I'm caught up except for the last few. Oh, James Wong had another question here that we missed about lighting. Umbrella, shoot through, or reflective? For shoot through, how near? Should I set near with lower flash? Oh my God, James. Okay, so James, I'm sorry, but this maybe I should have just skipped this for you so I didn't have to give you grief. This is exactly what I'm talking about, man. Every one of your options and every one of the variables on your options can be done with an amazing outcome, provided that you understand the inverse square law, provided that you are using it for the right reasons in the right situation. And when I say the right reasons, that means for the visual outcome that you want to get, right? That's the key. So fact of the matter is, James, every one of those is viable as long as you understand why. It always comes back to why, gang, right? Hence, I'm the guy that talks about how and why, right? So that's what it always comes back to. All right, let's see here. Steve Wolking, I'm interested in attending trade shows. I can only attend 1 or 2 maybe next year. Which 1 or 2 would you recommend? Education being the most important for you. Wow. So if your focus is business, Steve, then I would say WPPI is probably a good one. Also, I skipped over imaging. Imaging USA, actually, better yet. Sorry, can I just wind that whole one back and let me rephrase it and start again? If your focus is education and business, then Imaging USA in Nashville next year. It's like February, hands down, number 1. Number 2 on the list would be WPPI. If this is about making money. If it's just about an opportunity to learn, right? Then I would say consider an event like Shutterfest or Pixel Photo Fest, like the one that's coming up in 2 weeks. They would potentially be the best ones. But all that being said, those are kind of the big ones, right? The high profile ones. There's a lot of great stuff that happens on a more local level. So, part of it is just doing some research, locally to you and seeing what's available. But those are the ones that, kind of top of mind for me, that I would recommend. So, FN89 asked earlier, I'm sorry if I missed it. Do you have a recommendation for a barn door kit for Bowens mount standard reflectors? Amazon. Literally, the barn doors that I had, if you watch that video about my home studio, not here, in fact, I don't have any barn doors in here, but the video from my home studio, the barn doors that I used, I got cheap on Amazon. They work great. So just, Google barn doors. If you're using a standard reflector, that's a 7-inch reflector, right? So you want barn doors that will fit a 7-inch reflector. And most of them come with like a little cheap gel kit in that. And they worked absolutely fine. I had no problem with them. So, okay. Let's see, Ajax. Make sure I'm okay time-wise. Good, all right. What are the 3 main points for a portrait photographer to add in his or her About Me page of their website? Wow, okay. 3 main points. Number 1, something that says who you are and the fact that you specialize in portraiture. Number 2, something that says that you are passionate about people and photographing people without using the word passionate. Passionate's one of those cheap words when you hear it in marketing, right? Everybody says it, but what does that really mean, right? So you're gonna do it by telling a little story. Point number 3, try to talk a little bit about the experience that people will have with you. Understand that the about page, so follow along, gang, right? This is a big one to finish on. So follow me here. The about page, even though it says, in Ajax's case, about Ajax, it's not really about Ajax, not a good one, because people aren't really clicking on that link to learn who Ajax is. They don't want to know that Ajax bought his first camera when he was 11 years old, and he did this, and he did. Nobody cares about that crap. If that's what's on your website, lose it, lose it, lose it. Period. Done. Right? What they really care about, because understand, gang, nobody clicks on the about page first, right? That's not the first. When you go to somebody's website, that's not the first thing you click on. You're going to look at their pictures. That's the first thing you see. If you like their pictures and you find their pictures interesting, then you'll click on the about page, right? Right. So by the time they get to the about page, if they're a potential customer, which is who you care about, right? You don't care if another photographer is stalking you. That's not what your website's for. You care about your potential customers. So if they're a potential customer, they've clicked on that about page because they're curious. I wonder what it would be like to work with this guy or woman. That's what that about page is. So that doesn't mean you write it and say, well, if you hire me, I'm going to do this. No. You have to write it like it's about you. But what you want to talk about are the things that matter most to your client. They want to know that you specialize in portraits, not food. Right? Because why would I hire a food photographer to shoot my portrait unless I'm going to be eating something? Just saying. Right? They want to know that you really love what you're doing. Not that, I shot commercial advertising for 30 years, but I'm old now and I'm retiring, and so I figured portraits would be easier. It's like those commercials that you see for, I think it's one of the insurance companies where, the doctor comes in and the patients say, hey, are you really good? And the doctor's like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, not really the guy that you want working on you, right? Okay? Same kind of thing. So it's about them. That's how you're going to kind of phrase that and really make that work. Also, minimum of 500 words. This is what makes it tough. 500 words minimum, because anything less than 500 words, Google doesn't care about. So it's not going to wind up with any kind of a search ranking. It's not going to show up in the listings. You need to have a minimum of 500 words. So it takes some effort. It's also very worth your while. Have somebody edit your page. If you know a friend that's really good with grammar and that kind of stuff, that's fine. If you can hire an editor or somebody locally, that's fine. You can go to a website like Fiverr.com, that's Fiverr, 2 R's.com. Hire somebody offshore. It might be a good idea to pick somebody who's actually in the US if you're speaking English. Or you're going to pay a little bit more, but go to a website like Thumbtack.com. But have someone take what you write and kind of massage it, tweak it, edit it, make sure that you are winding up with a product that is polished, because there will be people that will read your about page that actually do have good grammar and do actually notice spelling mistakes and understand when something's got bad grammar. Bad grammar, spelling mistakes, poorly written stuff that's hard to follow, stuff that repeats itself, that reflects poorly on you. An about page that's got like 50 words, 2 sentences, 2 paragraphs reflects poorly on you. An about page that talks about, well, I use this camera and I own this lenses and this is what we work with. Who cares? Do you really think that somebody's going to not hire you because you use a Sony? Like, really? Come on now. They care about the finished picture, right? That's just what it's all about. So remember, as you're writing that stuff, Ajax and the rest of you, you're writing it for your potential client. Put yourself in their shoes, and that's what you're discussing. Okay? All right, gang. So 90 minutes on the button. That's rare, but I'm going to finish on time tonight. We're out of questions. You guys have been awesome. Thank you for hanging out for another Wednesday evening. Get out there, do some shooting. I hope to see you back here next week before I hit the road for California and then Cleveland. But as always, gang, whatever you do, please remember these words.
Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now, pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.